What is up, YouTube? Today I'm coming back at you with another tabletop RPG review, and today we're going to be taking a look at an RPG supplement. And if you've watched some of my other RPG reviews, you'll know that I have been expecting this book for many months now, and I thought this was going to come out a long time ago. But I've been waiting impatiently, and it has finally come out, and I have my copy in hand. So today we're going to be taking a look at the newest supplement for one of my favorite RPGs, the Fantasy Age Lairs supplement. So this is the newest book in the Fantasy Age series. For those of you who know me, I'm a big supporter of this series, and I have every book. And so before we do the interview, before we do the review, I just want to, give a little bit of publicity to Fantasy Age, because for those of you who see my other reviews, you already know this, but for people who haven't, I make these videos to try to get as much awareness as possible out for this system, because I want people to play it, because I think it's a good system and I think it deserves the sort of praise that I'm giving it, and I think more people would probably like it if they even knew about it, but a lot of people don't. So before I get into that, I'm going to show you every book that's published under the Fantasy Age title. There is also one additional book that you can get that's Fantasy Age. It's called Titan's Grave. It's basically a campaign setting made by Will Wheaton. And yeah, but I don't have that book. It's the only book I don't have, and I don't really consider it part of Fantasy Age for reasons that I don't want to get into. But yeah, I have all the Fantasy Age books. So this is the newest one. This is Fantasy Age Lairs, and we'll do a quick review of this in a moment. But before we do, let's look at the other ones. You can also get the Campaign Builder's Guide. So if you're interested in that, check out my review on that. I have a review of that. I also have a review of the Fantasy Age Companion, which is a really great book as well. And then I also have the Fantasy Age Bestiary. This is an essential. You need to get this one if you're going to plan on running this. And last but not least, the basic rulebook, the thing everything's built off of. So those are all the books in the current series. So if you're interested, look for those. Those are what the covers look like. Those are what they are called. So yeah, check those out. You can get them on Amazon, Green Ronin's website, all over the place. So definitely check those out. But this is the newest one, Fantasy Age Lairs. So for those of you who haven't seen my reviews before, what I like to do is I like to cover pretty much do the construction of the book first, and then I go over the inside and what you can find on the inside, and then I give sort of at the end I wrap up my final opinions. So let's start her off. So the construction and the feel of this book. Alright, so like all of the other Fantasy Age books, the actual hardbound quality of this book is absolutely fantastic. You know, the same exact sort of hardback quality that you would expect from Green Ronin's publications. There's no inside, front paper art, but, it's nice, very durable hardcover. I honestly think this hardcover is thicker and more durable than some of the other major publishers. I think it's right up on par with Wizards of the Coast and Paizo. So definitely getting a good quality cover. The artwork, as I've mentioned in all of the Fantasy Age videos I do, I love the art style of the Fantasy Age series. It is absolutely fantastic, and this is no exception whatsoever. You have some really cool stuff going on here. You have some ghouls. They're basically attacking the lair of a ghoul, and it's just really cool. You have some magic in the back. You have a warrior here and a rogue here. So all three main of the classes are represented on the front, and then they're also represented again on the back here. You have your warrior, your mage, and then your rogue. So really, really cool. Just really nice artwork all around. Absolutely love it. And like I mentioned in the, it seems like this is going to be a trend going forward here. But like I mentioned in the review for the Campaign Builder's Guide, just like the Campaign Builder's Guide, this is not cloth bound. As you can see there's no cloth binding, just like in the Campaign Builder's Guide. If you look here at one of the earlier releases, you can see that there is actually a cloth binding there. And the difference there I've noticed is the books that are not printed in Canada. So if you see on the back here, this one's printed in Canada and has the cloth binding. Same with the basic rulebook, printed in Canada, has the cloth binding. These ones printed in the United States do not have the cloth binding. However, I have had no issues with my copy of the Campaign Builder's Guide, so I have no doubt that this will hold up the test of time. So let's get into what the contents of this book are. So, like I mentioned in some of my other videos, I'm not sure if Green Ronin watches these videos, but literally everything that I have put on my want to get list for this RPG, back in my original review of it, has basically come out. Now I'm not sure if that's just because the things I want are on their roadmap already, or if I had some influence, which I absolutely doubt. But if Green Ronin, you're listening, you're doing a good job. This is the next thing that I said in almost the exact same order, which is what's the most weird about this. So I originally thought this was going to be another bestiary type book, and what I originally thought was it was going to be one main monster on one page, and instead of having the lengthy description in the bestiary, because the bestiary is a 2-page spread for every monster as well, I thought that it would be like a mini room that it would live in, and like a mini dungeon thing. That is not what this is. It's actually much cooler than that. So I'm actually pleasantly surprised. First it starts off with this introduction on how to basically use this book, what other books in the series you'll need to run it. You also have your table of contents in the front here. And then it goes into some new things. Location and layer stunts. So you get more stunts here. These are GM stunts though. So players, you don't really get to use these. But more stunts for the GM, which is always cool. These stunts are basically things that you'll use in sort of dangerous locations is the main point of these. So like for instance, for one of the 1+ SP cost stunts, you have something called Distraction. Target suffers a -2 penalty on their next action for an additional 1 SP. The penalty applies to 1 additional action. So basically you can use your environment and make a distraction of some sort. Here's another one. Here's another 1+ SP cost. Damaging event. Your actions cards will cause a large object or volatile substance to damage your target further. The target suffers a separate attack dealing 1d6 damage per SP spent, which is an absolute amazing one. So I guess some of these are player stunts, but on the next page you have DM stunts. Or not really stunts, but I guess you could call them stunts. But yeah, you have a bunch of different cool stuff for both. But that's really all you get for the players in these front 7 pages is all that's going to be useful to the player. The rest is all GM stuff. So I'm sorry, players, there's another GM supplement. But in my opinion, no offense players, but the GM supplements are much more a high priority than the player supplements. So because no one's going to run a game that doesn't have good stuff for the GM. So let's get into the rest of this. Other than those stunts, it goes right into the first adventure. So actually I don't think I mentioned it, this is an adventure compilation book. So it's not a bestiary, it's an adventure compilation book. Sorry for waiting so long to say that, but if you don't know what an adventure compilation book is, I made a video about the different types of adventure supplements that you can get in RPGs. So go check that video out. I go in depth about what each type is and what I like about each type. But this is an adventure compilation book. And in this book, you get 8 adventures over the course of, let me see how many pages, 125 pages. So these aren't just small adventure compilations, these are lengthy. So these are more like, instead of like the mini dungeon tome where you only get 2 pages per adventure, this is more like taking full-on adventure modules and sticking them in a compilation, sort of akin to almost like the Yawning Portal, but I think it's done better in this book. The Yawning Portal they're all different lengths. These are all the same sort of length, which is really good. So basically you can basically split these adventures up into either 1 to 2 sessions, and if 3 sessions if it's taking a really long time. But I'm going to say these adventures can basically be played in 1 to 2 sessions. So really cool. So let's get into the layout of these adventures. And one thing I will say that's really nice about this book is, I don't know if they, like I said, I don't know if they watch my videos or something, but like all of my complaints have been addressed so far, which is absolutely great. If they are watching my videos, that means they're listening for sure. But every page, almost every 2 pages, there's at least a piece of art. Like I know I mentioned that in my campaign builder's guide that there was not a whole lot of art. This is not the case here. You have art on almost every 2 pages. Like, there's just art everywhere. It's absolutely great. Lots of good inspiration. And I'm literally just flipping 1 page at a time, and there's a piece of art on every single 2-page spread. It's really great. There's a lot of art in here for inspiration and stuff. But let's talk about the actual layout of this book. So every single adventure in this adventure compilation will start off with a small gray square, and that will tell you the basic necessity, well, not the basic necessities, but the basic things that you're going to want for your players going into this adventure. So for instance, I'll read this one out. This adversary layer and the adventures surrounding them suit player characters of levels 4 to 7. Groups with specializations, spells, or other abilities pertaining to animals, wilderness survival, and tracking might find many of the challenges of the valley easier to overcome. So it basically gives you like what sort of things your players are going to want to have, what level they should be, and just basically, sort of like things that will be helpful for your party to have. Not necessarily required, but things that would be helpful in the adventure. So nice to have that at the start of every adventure. It's always like a very short 1-paragraph thing. And then it goes into basically the premise of the adventure is the next section. And these are always half-page, maybe a little bit more, sections where it just talks about the basic concept of this adventure. Now, I'm not going to read this one just because I don't want to sit here and read the whole book. If you're interested in this I highly recommend you just going and picking it up. But yeah, so I'm not going to read that. But then the next section is placing the adventure in your world. So this is a really cool section to have because unlike a lot of adventure compilation books, this one gives you a whole 2 paragraphs here on ideas on how to drop it into your world. So because Fantasy Age is a non-setting RPG where it doesn't have any default setting, I like that they do this because there are other non-setting RPGs that have compilation books like Basic Fantasy that don't really give you tips on how to drop it into your campaign. You're just sort of expected to on your own. This gives you tips, so I like that a lot. It's always good to have that sort of stuff. And then the next section here is how your players learn of the valley. So basically it's a couple paragraph long section here on the sort of ways you could make plot hooks to grab your character's attention and different things that you're going to want to talk to them about in order for them to go on this quest. And below that there's a subsection called rumors, and these are written up rumors that you can just throw in there as well, things that might be key to the adventure. For instance, I'll read off one of these rumors. If you leave the valley undisturbed, the magic remains tied to the skulls of the Titans. So just different rumors like that. And then it goes right into the key NPCs and stuff. So the key NPCs tend to all be like the villains. I don't think there's any real fully fleshed out NPCs other than the villains. They do give names for some of the other NPCs and small descriptions, but nothing to the extent of these bad guys. The bad guys are really going to take, the front and center because this book is called Lairs, after all. And one nice thing about this book, even if you're not interested in this book for the adventures themselves, all of the monsters in here are unique from the bestiary. So you're not going to find the same assortment of monsters in here. You'll find some in here that are similar to some of the stuff in the bestiary, but tweaked. But there are some in here that are completely unique and definitely worth picking up on their own just for that. So you go right into the main NPCs, and it starts off with the main villain. So it has a couple paragraphs here and then it goes right into the stat block and artwork for him. And it's a lot of information there. And then it goes right into a section called role-playing for the main villain. So you get some, if they encounter outside of combat the main villain, you have some tips for role-playing them, or even in combat role-playing. And then there's the last section for the main villain is the combat and tactics. So obviously these are things that you're going to want to know while running the adventure itself. Underneath the main villain, you have the henchmen, which are like the next step down, and they get the exact same treatment as the main villain, so very detailed there. And then you have the minions, which sort of get the same treatment, but in a much more condensed format. Like it goes right to giant mosquito to corrupted animal, and actually this particular adventure has corrupted animal as a template. So, like I said, if it's not a brand new thing, it's a modification to something in the bestiary. It's not a straight up rip-off of the bestiary, so you're not getting a lot of duplicates. Basically what the template is you take any base animal that you want out of the bestiary, like say you wanted to get the wolf, if you wanted a wolf to attack them in the valley, you add this corrupted template and it sort of adds the flavor of this specific adventure to the wolf and adds some unique things. So like if they faced normal wolves in the past, this will be a little bit new for them. So that's cool because I'll read off some of the modifications that the corrupted animal gives. So it gives armor, which increases the armor rating by 2. Gives corrupted regeneration, which heals the animal 4 health at the beginning of its turn. And then it gives fast, which adds +2 to its speed. So those are like the additions that the corrupted animal template gives. After that section, it goes right into the mini gazetteer for this adventure. So every single one of these adventures takes place in a unique location, and they all have a gazetteer of some of the key places in this mini location. So like for instance, in the Valley of the Whispering Titans has the Learning Skull, the Skull of Fear, Reaping Skull, Skull of Fortune, which are all these different skulls that you find in there. And then it goes right into a map on the next page, and you can see all the different skulls placed on the map. They're giant skulls. They're not like little things that you find. These are like big giant skulls, which is why they're in the gazetteer section. But then it has the next section, which is getting into the valley and how like the players get inside of it. And then it goes right on into the adventure, and it's a 3-act adventure for each one. So you have 3 full acts, and they have some location stunts for each location that are specific to these locations. And then it has some suggested foes from the bestiary if you want to add some extra stuff. And then it's just a full-on adventure, which is really great. So like it's just a really well thought out, and all of the adventures have these, like in the Campaign Builder's Guide, how they had those, I think they were red squares. These have like different colored squares because each adventure has its own color code. They have these lightly colored squares, and those are the author's notes on how to run this, run these adventures. And at the very end, after the very last act, it gives you adventure seeds. So if you wanted to use this as a seed in your campaign, like a starting point or like a main plot point, and you want to move on after this story, continuing the story after the adventure, it gives you some helpful ideas. Like, I'm not going to really read these off because I didn't read the adventure, so you don't know any of the NPCs listed in these adventure seeds. But they do give you some adventure seeds on moving on after the adventure if you want to make it into something bigger than just a one-shot or something like that. But that's basically the layout for every single adventure. They all follow the same layout because then you go right on into the next adventure. And it starts off the exact same way with a half-page description of what the adventure is basically going to be and all that stuff. What I will say that's really cool about this is each one of these adventures has a different gimmick, gimmick. A different sort of like gimmick or a different like subgenre. So like this first one is very like your classical nature, just sort of like a jungle crawl. But there's some really cool ones in here. Like you have a more like gothic style adventure here, and it's called where is it? The Ghoul Prince. which is what's depicted on the front here, on the front cover. So the Ghoul Prince is a really cool like gothic style adventure. And then my favorite one in here is, if I can find it, here it is. I gotta go to the front. It's called the University of Tabak. It's a really cool, like, really out there, sort of like psychologically, like weird. It's just really weird, and I love it. It's so unique and it's different, and I really like that. However, this is an adventure for levels 8 to 12, so. But the artwork for this section is super cool too, because it goes off that weird vibe, and it's different, and it has one of my favorite new enemies in here. These guys right here. Check these guys out. Aren't those cool? Yeah, and then I think there's another picture of them too. Further on in the adventure. Yeah, right there. Check that out. They're really cool. I like those. So, yeah, there's just a bunch of really cool stuff, and then there's like a water adventure for those of you who want to play like Merfolk or something. And there's an adventure on the back of a Titan. I mean, that's some really cool stuff here. And then you have like one of these more like fantastical adventures, which is really cool. Like this one's kind of like a carnival-y type deal. Let me see if I can't show you here. Let's check out some of this artwork for this carnival-y like adventure. Super cool stuff, man. And this is like one of my favorite bad guys that they've made in this book. Like, look at that. That's super cool. So just like a ton of really useful information in here. In my opinion, if you plan on running Fantasy Age, this isn't necessarily a need to get in order to run the game comfortably type book, but I would highly recommend this book. So definitely recommend this book for anybody running the game. I don't really say players need this book because there's only like 4 or 5 pages of player content. The rest is all for GMs, so not a whole lot of use for players, but personally, in my opinion, GM supplements are much more important than player supplements. No offense to the players out there, but if you want somebody to run a game, you're going to want new, fresh material for them to use, and no GM is going to want to run the same stale stuff over and over again, so more GM content's always appreciated. So, in my opinion, now the order of books that you should buy. So if you want to get into Fantasy Age, the order of books that I think you should buy. If you're a player, you really only need the base rule book. As a GM, this should also be your first purchase. So no matter if you're running or playing this, you need this book. And if you're a player, this is all you need. But if you're a GM, this is the first book I think you should get. In addition to that, the second book I think you should get as a GM, the Bestiary. Absolutely need it. There's only like 20 monsters in the basic rule book. In addition to that, I think you also would really benefit. This is the first one that I don't think is required. The only 2 that are required to run the game are the first 2. Now the first big helpful one is the Companion. Adds a bunch more options and a bunch of extra content that you can give to your players, so this is super helpful. And also like artifacts and really cursed items and really cool stuff in there. And then the last one I think you absolutely need, well not absolutely need, but is really helpful is the Lairs book. And I think the last one you should really pick up is probably the Campaign Builder's Guide. Not because it's not a great book, but because it's the one that could be done with the least. But I still think it's really beneficial to have if you're running the game. So, yeah. I absolutely love the Lairs book. It's much better than expected. Like I said, I just kind of expected this to be an over-glorified bestiary. But it's so much more than that. You get so much good content in here. And honestly, this is probably, I would have to say, my second favorite supplement. Aside from the Companion, because I'm not really counting the Bestiary as that's absolutely needed. The three supplements, I'll call the Campaign Builder's Guide, the Companion, and this. I would say this is probably my second favorite behind the Companion. So, absolutely great book, super cool. You can pick this one up for $34.95 from Green Ronin or Amazon or Barnes & Noble, wherever you want to buy it from. Definitely check, or your local game store if they carry Green Ronin, mine doesn't, but definitely check this book out. Highly recommend it. It will not let you down. This is up to par with all the rest of the Fantasy Age stuff, and it's one of my favorite systems, and I'm going to keep highly recommending it until I cannot breathe anymore. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I just want to make one last thing. For those of you who shared my last couple, apparently, well, not apparently, I know that some of my RPG videos have been shared on Facebook, and I just want to thank everybody who's sharing my videos on Facebook. It really helps out the channel. I don't get paid for any of this stuff. I just do it for fun. So you guys sharing this really helps me out and just lets me, keeps me motivated to make more stuff like this. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and review of the Fantasy Age Lairs book. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.